can you, as a property manager, help your landlords to save money on property maintenance? I was literally about to go to bed and I thought, oh my gosh, this is a video that I need to make before I go to sleep. I need to tell the people what they can do to save money. We are going through a financial crisis right now. Loads of landlords are selling their properties. Loads of people are going into all sorts of debt. I can't sleep. I'm stressed. I need to help people save money so they can keep more of it in their pocket. Let me give you approximately 10 ideas that I have learnt through working with lots of property managers and letting agents, how they enabled their clients to save money through property maintenance. So watch more and I will share. The first way to save money for property maintenance is doing a 6 monthly maintenance check or property inspection, or even before the tenant moves into the property, you do a really detailed inventory. Now, before the tenant moves in, the inventory is done. The tenant knows what the property is going to be like when they need to leave the property. Obviously, before the tenant moves in, you can make sure that all issues are sorted out so that when they go in, everything is perfect for them. Then 6 months after they've moved into the property, you go in, you have a look round, you have a detailed checklist. The more detailed the checklist is, the better it is for you to make sure that no issues have arisen, or if they have arisen, you can take care of them straight away. Now, what I have found is those tenants who have not had a rent increase for a very, very, very long time do not want to disrupt you with any issues at all. So when you go round to their property or you've given them a rent increase, all of a sudden, ping, 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 loads and loads of maintenance issues come out of the woodwork. So in doing a 6 month maintenance check, you can go around the property, you can look at the roof, you can look at the gutters, you can look at the drains, all those major issues that come up, you can have a look at them, see if there are any issues, and then rectify them ASAP. So rather than letting it mount up, and a small, tiny issue becomes a big, massive one later on, you can just make the issue really small and deal with it immediately. Educate your tenants. Before they've moved into the property, give them perhaps some sort of checklist or some sort of like information booklet so that they know how to look after the property when they live there. This applies for single lets, for commercial lets, for houses of multiple occupation. In fact, especially for houses of multiple occupation. They need to know how to deal with, like, the most common issues is mold. Black mold in the bathroom, in the kitchen, around their windows, behind their wardrobes, those kind of areas. You need to be able to educate your tenants as to how to make sure that they don't get lots of black mold, and if they do, how they can get rid of it very, very quickly, because obviously in London there's been lots and lots of cases where unfortunately a child died not too long ago because they had such a high exposure to mold in the property. Also, educate your tenants about how to look after the white goods in the property. So, how to make sure that the washing machine is able to be used, the tumble dryer is able to be used, the fridge freezer, and the dishwasher. White goods is such an issue and they can be so expensive to replace, especially for the landlord. But if we teach the tenants as to how to look after them and how to maintain them, then there shouldn't be any need to constantly getting a new white appliance every year or every other year. So just educate your tenants on that issue. Vermin is another issue that can be a huge problem for tenants in a property. If we just teach tenants as to how to make sure that they keep their property clean and tidy, they don't have food in all different places in the house, and just basically how to prevent vermin from traveling all over the property, especially for HMOs, house of multiple occupation. Tenants obviously, aside from eating in the kitchen, they sometimes bring food in their bedrooms or eating in the hallway up into their bedroom. If we just try and give them educational tips and hints in order to make sure that they keep the food in one specific place, and that specific areas aren't crowded, and they don't leave back doors open or front doors wide open for vermin to come in. So education, education, education. Another way to save money is to have some of the little tiny things within stock if you probably have space within your offices or perhaps within a shed. So something like light bulbs are always going. Some of them you have like really specific integrated light bulbs, so if you can keep some of those and you don't have to keep going to the shop and buying really expensive ones, things that you can buy in bulk is always a fantastic idea. If you can buy plungers, that would be awesome, because there's always a tenant saying that if something is stuck in a sink, so if you can get the plunger out and won't have to obviously get a plumber to come over, which was obviously save you a little bit of money. Spare keys. So obviously spare keys is a definite must, because the last thing we want is to have to call the locksmith out to change the doors. So if you're able to get some spare keys to keep with you, or perhaps get a lockbox, which is keep it as close to the property as possible. It depends on obviously if it's a shared space. So if it's flat, it may be a little bit more difficult, but if you're able to keep a lockbox either very close to the door or underneath a window or out of sight, depending on your area, what the crime levels are like in your specific area the properties are, but some sort of lockbox that you can keep at the property. And this will obviously help as well when you have maintenance people coming to the property, trusted maintenance people, rather than them coming to meet you specifically and taking time out of your day. You can keep the lockbox there and the spare key in there. Obviously as well, if the tenant has lost their key, then like I said before, you don't have to get a locksmith out. You can give them access to that lockbox, put the key back in there, and then you can charge them appropriately. Rodent traps as well. So obviously there's all sorts of rodents and pests and all sorts of things. So if you can keep perhaps a small supply of I don't like to say rat killer, but you know what I mean, like pest control things that get rid of all of the icky yicky pests. Keep some of that in store, so that when your tenants contact you, you have it ready to go. You can just go down there and just take care of the issue very quickly. Emergency fund. Now this may be not something a bit controversial, because obviously you shouldn't, as a property manager, you shouldn't have to have an emergency fund for your landlords, but there is sometimes when landlords don't have enough money, and you as a property manager have a responsibility to the tenants to ensure that they don't live in an environment that is detrimental to their health, detrimental to their life, and at the end of the day the courts will come back to you and say you didn't do anything. As a property manager, there's lots of legal responsibilities that you have in place of the landlord, and obviously you're an intermediary between the landlord and the tenant, so you need to make sure that you have a little kind of a little nest egg or a little emergency fund, so that if there is any issues and the landlord is not prepared to do it, not prepared to put any money out, you can make sure that the tenants are looked after by having that money there. And then obviously you have to obviously get the money back from the landlord, but right now it's all about having enough money to enable the property to be maintained to a safe level for the tenants. Choosing your staff wisely. Now obviously there's lots of third parties that you have to engage in when it comes to property management and property maintenance. Now in order to save money, what would be very, very crucial is to have like a few telephone numbers of the most important maintenance staff. So you need to have a plumber, electrician, a carpenter, perhaps a roofer, someone who can do EPCs, EICRs, and gas maintenance, alarms, and pest control. All those kind of tradesmen are extremely important when it comes to property management, and if you're able before you need them to work out like some sort of price list, so that, and obviously sorry, I've got one very important thing, is a handyman. If you're able to work out some sort of price list with them, so that when an issue does arise, then you know how much it will cost, because there's nothing worse than needing someone in an emergency, because they'll then call you, they'll then charge you call out fees, a large call out fee. Obviously they'll look at the issue, they'll then charge you again for the time that they're there, as well as all the prices for any of the parts that they need to fix the problem. But if you have all this information beforehand, before you actually need to call them, then you'll know how much to quote back to the landlord if this issue takes place. So also having a price list a basic general price list of how much you're willing to pay the tradesman for the specific tasks that are needed. So, for example, things like, unblocking a sink, dealing with, leaks in the bathroom or leaks in the kitchen because of, changing of taps, those kind of things. If you can get a rough idea of how much, your landlords are willing to pay for that with your added fee on top, this helps you save money in the long run because emergencies, call outs are very, very expensive. I have so many more tips to share with you today. I'd appreciate it if you did subscribe to the channel because I'm making videos practically every single day to help property managers, real estate agents, mortgage brokers, all those in the property industry from the perspective of an administrator. I'm a virtual assistant. I'm Tanya Day. I work with many people within the property industry, looking after their back office so that they can go out and do lots of, money generating tasks for their businesses and also concentrate on tasks that they enjoy. So if you'd like to subscribe to my channel, please do so. I won't tell you to press the notification bell because you will be notified every single day anyway. Just click on the subscription button. More people can hear my tips and hints that I have for them. So please subscribe. Please, please, please. Thank you. You have to determine what is an emergency and what is a non-emergency. Obviously, we need to make sure our tenants are safe and are well and there's no harm to life. But ultimately, what a tenant may deem as an emergency is not necessarily what a property manager and a landlord may deem as an emergency. Now, deciding as to what is an emergency and what is not an emergency will determine, how much money you're able to save on the call out fee. Now, as I said before, when you have really good tradesmen and they work really well with you, they'll, work out a price with you that will enable you to save money for the landlord. Now, emergencies, you can't be helped. There usually is some sort of call out fee, but depending on the relationship you have with the tradesman, it may not be as much money as they would charge, general Joe Blogs down the road. It may be a little bit cheaper. So just determine what is an emergency and what is non an emergency because that will save you a lot of money in the long run. Responsibilities of a property manager and responsibilities of a tenant. Now, tenants obviously have to maintain a property and look after it while they're in the property. They have to have quiet enjoyment from the landlord. They're not constantly bothered, not constantly harassed. Hence why I said a 6-month property check is the most I would do. If anything, maybe an annual check, but by 12 months anything could go wrong in that time period. But I'd say 6 months at a minimum is enough for you to be able to go and check the property out. You have legal responsibilities as a property manager. Landlords have responsibilities also, and so do tenants have responsibilities. Now, sometimes the tenants in houses of multiple occupation or single lets will assume that the landlord or property manager is responsible for certain things, but no, the tenants are responsible. For example, we've had tenants contact me, had maggots in their dustbin. That's not our responsibility. It's your responsibility. You can't call us to get rid of something that you put there in the first place. It makes no sense. So obviously, aside from determining if it's an emergency or non-emergency, you have to assess if it's a landlord issue or if it's a tenant issue, because landlords shouldn't be paying for things that is a responsibility of the tenant. Insurance. Do you ensure your landlords have the appropriate insurance for their property? Building insurance, contents insurance, and rent cover insurance, legal insurance. All these things are very vital for having a property. Now, what's happened very recently in Galpins Road in the Thornton Heath area in London, very, very unfortunate. It was absolutely awful. There was a major gas leak and basically a house exploded. It's really unfortunate. A little girl died. A couple houses was demolished in the process. It was absolutely awful. Unfortunately, people on the road are still waiting for compensation as we speak, which is September 2023. But what this highlights is obviously some people that was living in those properties had rented the properties from the landlords, and estate agents had to scurry to try and get them new places to live, had to take care of all their contents. The police was up and down the street, but then obviously the people who didn't have appropriate insurance will not get their house rebuilt. Clearly there's the major issue of whose responsibility is it. But ultimately the landlord and the property managers had to deal with the people that were staying in the properties that they were legally had to look after, to make sure that they were safe and well. Contents insurance, building insurance, legal cover, those are all very vital in a situation like that. You never know when you need your insurance, but having insurance is 100% vital. 100% vital. Please ensure that all the landlords that you deal with have appropriate insurance to make sure that that it's preventative. Anything that happens, they are covered and their tenants are looked after. Please watch the next video I have for you. It is absolutely amazing. It will give you so much information to help you in your business, and also to be able to help your staff within your business to be able to help you to get further, to grow further, and to generate more money and therefore profit.